Here we go. Here we go. Stand by.
Live from Columbia, this is Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network. Be a part of tonight's show. Call us at 800-956-7266 or email talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, here are your hosts for Sports Talk, Phil Kornblut, Kevin McCrary, and Tom Hayes.
Oh, man, I feel great, man. I'm glad to be a part of the organization. I'm ready to get to work, man. Be in the NFL and play some football. Man, I was nervous, man. I'm like, who they going to pick? They didn't give me a phone call. I was just, man, I had to let it out. I was happy about that moment, that situation.
With the fourth pick in the 2014 NFL Draft, the Buffalo Bills select Sammy Watkins, wide receiver, Clemson.
Didn't take long. Jadeveon Clowney goes number 1. Sammy Watkins goes number 4 in the NFL Draft. A very entertaining first round in the books from last night. They'll resume the draft coming up in about an hour. Good evening. Welcome into Sports Talk here on South Carolina Radio Network. Kevin McCrary and the Professor Tom Hayes with you tonight. No Phil Kornblut. For those of you that didn't know, it is Confederate Memorial Day. All the government offices around South Carolina are closed. DMV closed. Traffic light behind us here at our South Carolina Radio Network studios. Anyway, Kornblut always takes off Confederate Memorial Day. It's a holiday for him that he refuses to work on Confederate Memorial Day. But we press along here on Sports Talk as we give you our breakdown of the draft. Again, I thought it was a very entertaining, they've made this thing for TV, and it was made for TV last night. A lot of drama. Everybody watched Johnny Manziel fall. Clowney goes where we expected him to go. The Buffalo Bills trade up to get Sammy Watkins in Buffalo, where I think Clemson is now a farm team for the Buffalo Bills. 5 Tigers on the Buffalo Bills roster now with Watkins.
Yeah, anytime I see the Buffalo Bills, and it's interesting because of Clemson, is because I've always thought that for some players in the interview process, they have to talk climate. Yeah, do I get a kid from Florida who runs a 4.3 when it's hot outside and bring him into the Arctic and expect him to show that speed in the middle of November? It's interesting. I think it's taken C.J. Spiller at least 4 years to survive in Buffalo. Now he's thriving, but I think those first couple of years were tough. I mean, I know their offensive line was not that good, but I talked to Jerry Butler years ago, a former All-American wide receiver at Clemson, and he said the one thing that frightens you about Buffalo is the fact that you're playing out in that cold, and you may be playing well, and you don't know you're hurt. You go into the locker room at halftime and get warm. You say, whoa, and your knee is on fire. You don't know when you're hurt when you're playing in below freezing temperatures.
Well, he'll have to get used to it. I don't think he knows what he's in for. I saw a quote where he talked about how cold it was at Clemson this year and how they got some snow, so he's used to it. Buddy, Buffalo, they got more snow in 1 week in December than Clemson's had in the past 4 decades. But he'll do well up there. Sammy Watkins is a heck of a receiver. So we'll break down the draft. You'll hear from Sammy Watkins. You'll hear from Jadeveon Clowney. Both of those guys introduced earlier today. We've got a great show for you. Stick around. We're going to lay it out for you. We'll take your phone calls. We'll jump right into it here on Sports Talk.
All right, stand by, gentlemen.
First and foremost, if you want to join us tonight via the telephones, 800-956-7266. You can chime in your thoughts on the draft. Clowney going number 1, Watkins going number 4. What do you think about those picks? How will they produce for their respective teams? Good fit, bad fit? What is your expectation? You know, for me, I think Clowney is in a great spot. Being the number 1 pick, often you go to an organization that has that pick for a reason. There are perennial teams that seem to have the number 1 pick, like, the Cleveland Browns, the Jacksonville Jaguars that are always near the top there, and you have to go there and be counted on to turn an organization around. But Clowney is going to a Houston organization that, going into last year, a lot of people, I was one of those people that thought that was one of the best teams in football with what they had in terms of weapons offensively. You have Andre Johnson. You have a great running back. Nuke Hopkins emerged. You had one of the premier pass rushers in the league in J.J. Watt. They look pretty good, but the quarterback went bad. The season went bad. They end up with the number 1 pick. So Clowney's got to go in there, and he's not going to have to carry the load. And he's going to have a guy in J.J. Watt who's led the league in sacks to take him under his wing and show him the way. And offenses aren't going to be able to just focus on Clowney. In fact, he's probably going to be the other guy for a while. And that could give him some opportunities, just to chase the ball and make an impact and not be at a place like Jacksonville or Cleveland where everybody's going to look at him to turn around the organization.
Well, let's face it, one of the reasons the NFL captures the American fans' imagination is the fact that you can be worst to first very quickly because of the salary cap situation, the way teams can turn around. I put Houston in the category, and I'll put Atlanta in this category as well, similar to what New Orleans. New Orleans, now, their situation was unique because they lost their coach who was suspended, but they also had injuries. And you knew if they stayed healthy, coaches returned, New Orleans was going to turn around. Houston, Cushing goes out again. He's perennially injured, but that's their mainstay at linebacker. He got injured. Running backs got injured, and they had injuries in the line play as well. Those guys come back healthy. You got Clowney. You got DJ Swearinger there that can show him the ropes of the organization and where to go and where not to go in Houston. Jonathan Joseph was not a teammate, but he played at South Carolina as well. And my goodness, your owners graduated from University of South Carolina. How much more do you want as a Linus blanket for your first year in the NFL? And you got J.J. Watt, who's going to make sure you're not doubling and triple team. I mean, you can't. It's served up on a platform.
Yeah. Now maybe it's going to be Fitzpatrick or Case Keenum. You've got to get somebody to guide that ship, but you have weapons all around you. And Arian Foster's been banged up quite a bit over the past couple of seasons, specifically last year as well. But they have all of the pieces there if they can stay healthy and put it together. But nonetheless, it is a great situation for Clowney when he's going to go onto a defense that has some established players that can help him along the way, take some of that pressure off of him, and he can just go and play football and get an opportunity to play on the big stage, which is the postseason, early in his career. Some of these guys get drafted first, second, third, and they go to these teams that sit in no man's land for 4 seasons, winning 4 or 5 games. He's going to have an opportunity to get thrust right into the limelight early, potentially.
Yeah, and I think probably what Clowney has done for a defensive player, he has shown the way. He has walked the walk for the first time in the Twitter world. And all the complaining and this, that, and the other, and some of the problems, seeing the flaws of Clowney, it proves to you if you're a good offensive player, especially a quarterback, there's no system that can actually take you out of a football game but a tremendous defense. Whereas you can scheme a defensive player out of the football game, and some people question whether he's hustling or not. And he came through it in flying colors. And it shows the next defensive player who's the top dog that this is what you're going to have to go through when you are deemed the number one pick or the presumptive number one
Yeah,
pick.
the hype around Clowney was unbelievable, and it happens, and that's the era we live in now when the hype machine, also known as ESPN, also known as the four-letter network, and that hit in the Outback Bowl put him in another stratosphere,
Yeah.
expectations that no human being on the planet could live up to. But Clowney, all said, I think handled things about as well as a kid that was the number one player out of high school going into college could have handled them. He didn't have any major off-the-field issues. He hasn't had Jameis Winston type of headaches. He hasn't had Johnny. Think about the last two Heisman winners,
Yeah.
Jameis Winston and Johnny Manziel, the problems that they've had off the field, not related to football. Clowney managed to stay away from all of that and stay out of the limelight. There weren't a lot of pictures floating around Twitter and Instagram that put him in compromising positions. He did about everything right. Nobody's flawless. He's human. He's only 21, but he did things pretty much by the book. Now, Sammy Watkins goes up to Buffalo. That is one of those organizations when you talk about teams that are kind of in no man's land. They're literally in no man's land up there in upper New York, but Watkins can play. He was definitely the best receiver in the draft. Buffalo is trying to build something. Is E.J. Manuel going to be the guy that can bring them to the next level and get Sammy Watkins the ball? Maybe. And Watkins has a chance, I think, to be an elite wide receiver. You're going to pair him with C.J. Spiller. They still have Fred Jackson. They traded Steve Johnson to the 49ers today to make room for Sammy
that's
Watkins.
Just what the Niners need, another weapon.
Another weapon for Kaepernick and the San Francisco 49ers. But I like that pick for Buffalo. They gave up a lot to get him now. I was scratching my head a little bit there. They're at number 9. They wanted to move up to number 4, so they gave up the number 9 pick, their number 1 next year, and their number 4 next year. That's how bad they wanted Sammy Watkins.
Yeah, the other thing is, the only thing you worry about with Watkins is it has nothing to do with his talent. It all has to do that Ralph Wilson, one of the patriarchs of the AFL, and had the Buffalo Bills as a stalwart franchise until they've fallen on hard times. He has passed away, and that team is for sale. And I think they wanted to make a bold move to make the team even more attractive for a sale. So that's the only thing you worry about in contract negotiations. Who is he negotiating? His agent is negotiating with the old owners or the presumptive owners, or how that all is going to pan out. But from the football standpoint, I'm not worried about him. Only thing off the field, I guess his agent probably kind of dealing, even though the salaries are slotted, you still worry about who's going to be owning the team in another year.
Other thoughts on the first round? Of course, everybody was watching Johnny Manziel. He was forced down our throats. He slipped. Every year somebody slips that people think could go early. Aaron Rodgers slipped. Casey Clausen slipped. Brady Quinn slipped. Now, one of those guys ended up okay in Aaron Rodgers, and that worked out great for the Packers. We'll see if Cleveland can turn things around. I say that with very high skepticism. I wasn't shocked to see Manziel slip. I think the Cleveland Browns, who are going to be, if he starts this season, it'll be their 21st starting quarterback since 1990. I mean, they've swung and missed at quarterback. It's just like they're shooting fish in a barrel, and all of them are coming up black.
I've always thought that it's not glamorous, but a team, and in Cleveland, let's face it, people, Cleveland, this is an expansion team. This is not your mama's Cleveland Browns. They're in Baltimore. They're the Ravens. Even though it's not glamorous and it doesn't sell tickets, I think every expansion team should build the offensive line first. Then get a quarterback in there. When you get a quarterback in first, and everybody says, ooh, we got our franchise quarterback, and you put him behind tissue paper, and he gets murdered back there every Sunday, then he loses confidence. Then you've lost a quarterback. And so I think probably Cleveland, if they had to do it all over again, if you notice Jacksonville, when their expansion team, they got Tony Baselli in there and got some journeyman offensive linemen, built an offensive line, and had a decent team because they built the line first.
We'll break down the Panthers' first-round selection. They went wide receiver, so we'll share our thoughts on that. We'll hear from Clowney and Watkins coming up. Also, Lorenzo Nunez, the Gamecocks' latest quarterback commitment. We'll talk to his coach, Matt Dickman, coming up later in the program. Lots to do tonight on Sports Talk. We always talk about South Carolina per capita, pound for pound, if you will, one of the top sports states in the country, producing some of the top flight talent in the country. Rock Hill, pound for pound, might be the best city in the country in terms of producing talent. You know, every time I'm driving up and down I-77, I always do my best to pull off in Rock Hill and drink some water somewhere out of a faucet. Eat the food, do whatever you have to do. There's something going on in Rock Hill that creates unbelievable athletes, specifically football players. Jadeveon Clowney going #1 last night. So Jadeveon #1. There's a great article that Chris Lowe did in ESPN chronicling all the Rock Hill talent that's in the NFL, and they've had a lot of players selected in the NFL draft recently.
Yeah, and in fact, they don't count him here, but we can go all the way back to our buddy from the 70s, and Rick Sanford, who was drafted #1 by New England back, I think, 77 or 78, and he was from Rock Hill. But in the last 13 years, as Chris Lowe points out in the article, 11 draft choices have come out of Rock Hill. 5 in the last 3 years have gone on to the NFL. Cardriel Patterson, who went to junior college and went to Tennessee for 1 year. Some of these colleges I don't remember they came from. Jonathan Meeks from Rock Hill High was drafted last year.
He's at Buffalo.
Yeah, linebacker Devontae Holloman, who played safety at South Carolina, is at Dallas. Stephon Gilmore in Buffalo in 2012. Cornerback Phillip Adams went on the 7th round in 2010 from Rock Hill High. Jonathan Joseph, we mentioned, he's with the Houston Texans. I think he was drafted by Cincinnati back in 2006 on the 1st round. Cole Simpson, Benjamin Watson, tight end. Did he go to Georgia?
He did
Georgia,
play at Georgia.
Yeah, and he drafted by New England on the 1st round in 2004.
Right.
And then in 2002, 2 defensive backs, Chris Hope, who went to Florida State, and I think he was all academic ACC at his time there at Florida State. He Oh, wait a minute. I
Played in the
get them
Super
mixed
Bowl with the
up.
Steelers.
He played in the Super Bowl with the Steelers, and then Derrick Ross, who went to Ohio State, was drafted in 2002. So 11 players, 11 players in the last 13 years drafted in the NFL.
Yes, something in the water up there.
Must be.
Something in the water in Rock Hill, South Carolina.
And Phillip Adams, Stateman pointed out he did go to South Carolina State. He's a cornerback drafted, I think, by New England back in 20.
Who played for the Seahawks last year? Won a Super Bowl ring. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not only did they get drafted, most of those guys on the list turned out to be pretty darn good. And they were all very good in college. Coach Simpson didn't have the NFL career that a lot of people expected him to have with his outstanding college stay.
That's because he went to the black hole, Detroit.
Well, he started out in Buffalo. He started out in Buffalo and then went to another black hole in Detroit. We're going to hear from Jadeveon Clowney, his introductory news conference at Houston. That's coming up next.
It's a big day for our franchise. It's another example of our commitment to
Just a little while ago, the Panthers' first-round draft pick, Kelvin Benjamin, wrapped up his introductory news conference in Charlotte, time permitting. We'll spring some of those on you later in the program. The Panthers, well, it's no secret, they need help at wide receiver, considering everybody that caught a pass last year in the wide receiving core is gone for one reason or another. So the Panthers are going to be really hodgepodging it together, for lack of a better expression, and I'm not real sure what their plan is. You know, forget the wide receivers, they also need help on their offensive line. They don't have any tackles.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I'm Cam Newton right now, he's sitting up there recovering from ankle surgery, I'm going, first of all, I don't have anybody to block for me, and he was hit more than any quarterback in the league last year. And then I'm going, if I do get any sort of time when I'm running for my life, who am I going to throw it to? Greg Olsen? I mean, how much? And that's no knock on Greg Olsen, who is, I would consider, an elite tight end, but you got to have some help out there. And I don't have a problem going for a wide receiver in round one, although history indicates a majority of wide receivers selected in the first 2 rounds end up being bust.
Well, you know, if you don't have a guy like a Sammy Watkins who's a game changer, a guy who can flip the field, don't go for him. Some general managers don't even like to draft wide receivers on the first round because their thought is, okay, you're a great wide receiver. You're probably on average going to touch the football only 8 times a game. So why would I use a high draft choice unless it's a game changer on a guy who's only going to touch the ball maybe on offense the fewest times of any of the skilled players? So they'll find they'll find a good offensive lineman or a tight end, running back, or cover corner now, or defensive rush in, rather than go wide receiver on the first round.
They better hope that defense up there can hold teams to about 1.5 points per game, because I think, you know, the offense last year at times got bogged down. You have 2 running backs that are smaller type running backs that are going to need holes. I don't know who's going to open them up offensively. Cam Newton's still developing as a passer. He's an electric playmaker, but he's not going to be able to do it all by himself, and he's going to take a lot of shots, and you wonder, can this guy stay healthy all of his 4th season in the NFL, taking the blows? He's already recovering from ankle surgery, so he's not going to have the OTAs to get on the same page with any of these guys. And I know they've got a plan up there, and Gettleman did an excellent job finding guys, and we never heard of Ted Cruz or Victor Cruz until Gettleman found him, and he thinks that he can do that sort of thing again. So we'll see how it all plays out. I'm not being critical, but I'm wondering what is going to play out with the Carolina Panthers. We'll see how Benjamin plays out. Very talented guy. He caught the game winner in the BCS championship game, but he struggled early in his career in the college game, and now he's going to go to the NFL game and try to take it to the next level. We'll see how it all shakes out. But I'm with you, Pro. I think if it's Calvin Johnson, I have no problem. And everybody knew he was as close to a can't-miss wide receiver as there was out there. And I think Sammy Watkins is as close to a can't-miss wide receiver as you can have out there. But Benjamin, he could be great. He could be okay. He could be Dwayne Jarrett reincarnated. I mean, the Panthers have had a lot of swings and misses at wide receivers, not named Steve Smith. Let's face it, they have. Other than free agents that they sign, and you can find receivers on the scrap heap that get cut because you have a cluster on one team and some pretty good guys can float out there. But the Panthers didn't make a move for any of these guys. They could have gone after Sidney Rice and tried to bring him back. He gave Seattle a discount. Maybe he would have given them not as much of one, but I mean, I just think there's moves they potentially could have made. I would have brought Ted Ginn back, who's not only a guy that can catch the deep ball for you, but flip the field in special teams where you might need some short fields. I don't know what their idea was in some of these meetings, and I'm not privy to them, but from an outsider's perspective, I have no clue. I've tried to wrap my brain around what they could be doing. I have no clue.
Well, see, here's the key. One of the things when people talk about a difference maker, the difference maker doesn't always mean he makes the play. Somebody will look at a game in Buffalo next year and say, wow, their running back had 150 yards. Why? Because the safety wasn't in the box, because they're worried. They're worried about the Clemson wide receiver, and he's opening up holes for the guy because he blows the top off of the defense. Or your tight end has all he can eat that day underneath because everybody's worried about Sammy Watkins. So he makes everybody around him better because he can blow the top off of defense. He may not have the individual stats, but look at the team around him because he scares the safeties to death, and they have to get out of the box to cover him.
Yeah, and you can throw Sammy Watkins back there on a punt return or a kickoff return. He is a very electric player. I think Sammy Watkins is going to have a fine NFL career, assuming they have a quarterback there they can develop and get him the ball. E.J. Manuel showed flashes last year, but he had a ways to go in terms of his development, to say the least. All right, one guy that's going to have an opportunity to make an impact in day one. Everybody will be closely monitoring Jadeveon Clowney, like they've been doing, quite frankly, for the past couple of seasons, ever since he walked out of the factory at South Point High School. Here he is being introduced at the headquarters of the Houston Texans. I think the first voice we're going to hear is Rick Smith. Bill O'Brien's also up there, the new head coach for the Houston Texans, and then you will hear the voice that you are familiar with now, Jadeveon Clowney.
It's a big day for our franchise. It's another example of our commitment to building a championship caliber football team. With this addition, I was walking out last night with Chris Olsen, our VP of Football Administration, and we were talking, Tiffany and I, my wife and I went last year to Los Angeles to the ESPYs Award. And we sat, interestingly enough, beside Jadeveon at that awards during the filming of the awards show. And never in my wildest dreams that I think we would have a chance to draft this guy. And unfortunately, we had to live a nightmare to get here. But it's a very, very big deal for our organization to add a man of his character, a man of his abilities, and to pair him with the rest of our group on defense and what we think we could do from a defensive perspective. So I appreciate you being here. I'll let Coach O'Brien give his remarks, and then you will be formally introduced to Jadeveon.
Thanks, Rick. Obviously, we're very excited to welcome JD to our football team here in Houston. There were a couple things to us as a staff that stood out as we got to know JD throughout this process. And, number one was obviously his talent, his versatility, the things that he showed on tape at his pro day. And, these were things that stood out to us, and we see him as an excellent fit for our football team and our defense. I think most importantly to me, what stood out was in my conversations with Jadeveon were the things that he talked about. He talked about his family. He talked about his teammates, how much he enjoyed being part of a team. He talked about how much he enjoyed winning. They won 33 games, I think, in 3 years at South Carolina with him as a part of that team and a part of that defense. And that says a lot to me about him as a person. And, again, I speak on behalf of our coaching staff here in Houston, and it's an exciting day for us, and it's been a really great process to be involved with Rick during this whole draft process, and we're looking forward to the next 2 days here and then getting going with putting together our team. So thank you, and I'll turn it over to Jadeveon.
Well, first of all, I'll say thank you to Houston Texans and the coaches for having me be a part of the Houston family. I'm just looking to get started down here in Houston, Texas, and being a part of the team. I know it's going to be a great adventure for me as I begin my journey into the NFL. I'm just overwhelmed right now. I don't know how to really say it, but I'm just ready to get going with these guys right here and let them show me my way through the NFL. Got great leaders on this team, J.J. Watt, Brad Cushion, Jonathan Joseph. Be a part of those guys is just an honor for me and my family. It's just a dream come true for me.
It was cool last night to see him, his reaction, just that raw emotion that you get in sports from time to time. And, the tears streaming down his face, obviously a dream coming true for him. When he came to South Carolina, he told Brad Lawing, I want to be the first pick in the NFL draft. And Brad Lawing said, okay, well, we're going to go to work, and you can do that. Ellis Johnson told him the same thing, and it's worked out for him. Dream come true for Clowney. Braves back at it tonight at home against a hapless Chicago Cubs. Although I shouldn't just call the Cubs hapless. The Braves have dropped, what, 8 of 9, Pro?
Yeah, 8 of 9.
So they've been pretty hapless themselves. Mike Morgan joining us now for our Braves report. And, Mike, maybe this is a perfect team for the Braves to get things back on track. If you can't beat the Cubs, really, who can you beat?
Yeah, unfortunately, the Cubs weren't on the schedule earlier. You used them a couple weeks ago when this whole thing started now. And as you mentioned, 8 out of 9. And obviously the big story has been the lack of hitting. It's been atrocious. So they have tried everything imaginable the Braves had to try and change it. Freddie Gonzalez has tweaked a number of things in the lineup, but nothing has seemed to work. At least you've got Julio Teheran on the mound. You feel good about that. He's got a sub-2 ERA. The problem is, guess what? They haven't hit for him either, so he doesn't have a great record. But it should be the perfect formula to bounce back, get back on track. You're coming off a day off, which I think the Braves really needed to kind of clear the head, and now try to see if they can return to their winning ways.
You know, it's interesting that this team obviously is creeped in when we talk about players' mentality. And it looks like the Braves suddenly, now that they can't hit, the fielding has gotten a little bit shoddy as well.
You know, I think it's almost like any other sport. When you're struggling to score, it bleeds over into other areas. You know, when you're struggling on offense, it can affect your defense. And I think sometimes we've seen that a little bit with Atlanta. I think overall the Braves are a good defensive team. I mean, you've got speed in the outfield. Andrelton Simmons might be the best fielding shortstop in the game. Gaddis is better than people thought he would be behind home plate. And outside of that, you know, you're serviceable. Nashville's not going to win a Gold Glove. We know that. Neither is Chris Johnson. Freddie Freeman, to me, should win a Gold Glove. And in fact, I wouldn't be surprised if he wins a lot of them. But I think, again, everything is a byproduct of when you're really struggling on offense, that can carry over, and that's been the case thus far. That's what made it even more pressing to me that the pitching has remained as good as it has, because I think psychologically, if you're a pitcher and every time you go out there and you know that you give up 2 runs, chances are you're not going to win the game, that's tough. I mean, think about this. Freddie Freeman was asked today, when is the last time you guys had a 2-run lead? He couldn't remember. Quite frankly, I can't either. It's been that long.
I can't remember if they had 2 runs. Period.
Well, yeah. I mean, they just have not been scoring at all. And you know, you look at the lineup today. I try not to second guess a manager who knows his personnel much more than I do. But for the life of me, I just don't get Jason Hayward in the leadoff spot. I just don't see that working. I don't think he feels overly comfortable in it. And I just don't think he fits the bill. But he's there again, followed by Upton, Freeman, Gaddis, Johnson, Upton, and then they'll fool around again with this putting the pitcher in the 8-hole spot. It'll be Teheran hitting 8th, Ramiro Pena playing 2nd tonight. He'll be in the 9-hole.
I just shift gears for a moment to put on your football hat, because I know you got another assignment coming up for a radio station here in Atlanta. As a fan, I love the pick. I think you got to protect your meal ticket. Jake Matthews' pick for the Falcons, how is that playing in Atlanta?
Well, you know, it's funny. We were doing a live draft show last night in the Georgia Dome, and the moment the Raiders took Khalil Mack, there was a lot of oohs and ahs and disappointing sighs, because I think a lot of people were hoping he would fall to Atlanta. But here's the bottom line. You just can't make offensive linemen sexy in terms of a draft pick. But the fact of the matter is they needed one. They desperately needed the guy, and you couldn't have a safer pick in this draft, in my opinion, than Jake Matthews. He will be an all-pro center for a decade. You could play him at right tackle and left. And bottom line is Matt Ryan was on his wallet more than any other quarterback in the league last year. You can't do that. When you invest $100 million into a quarterback, you have to keep him upright.
Mike, we appreciate it. We'll catch up with you Monday. Hopefully the Braves will be back on track, and maybe the Falcons will have a great draft.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Mike Morgan and our Braves report, brought to you by Whit Suber of Home Shop Realty, where you pay less for more. Call 803-518-3888 today. Again, the Braves and Cubs at Turner Field tonight as they begin a 3-game series. Atlanta trying to get things back on track in a jumbled up National League Eastern Division race right now. Boy, everybody's in that
2.5 games separate bottom.
Everybody's just hanging around in that race.
Yeah, he's right, though. In football, you cannot make offensive linemen sexy. But if you want to make them sexy, this is what, the 7th or 8th Matthews in the NFL. And the guy's dad was an all-pro for 14 years. I mean, this clown was trained to be an offensive lineman. You know, if you can't block, hold. That's what they tell you, right? You know, the interesting thing is, remember when they said in the SEC they don't call holding? What was the big knock against Auburn's tackle last night?
What was it? I don't know.
He holds too much, and they showed where he was holding, and there was no flag on any of the highlights.
They really don't call it much in the SEC. They do call it more in the NFL than in the SEC, the technique, but they can clean that up. You can't coach talent. Again, the big news in the NFL now, the draft about to crank up here in 5 minutes or so, but Josh Gordon, top receiver, leading receiver in the NFL with the Cleveland Browns last year, facing a year-long suspension for a drug violation. According to ESPN, he tested positive for marijuana.
Well, you know, they showed you the tremendous. Now, we can say and use the short phrase here, that's Cleveland. Cleveland was in a euphoric state the last, 18 hours because they got Johnny Manziel, and suddenly a cold glass of water is thrown right in their collective faces when they see that the big-time receiver is probably out for the season.
The current Powerball jackpot is $80 million. Be sure to purchase Power Play for an extra $1 for your chance to increase your winnings. Play the Powerball. All right, we're coming up on the top of the hour. We've got a jam-packed second hour. We've got some baseball cranking up, USC and Missouri getting it on over at Carolina Stadium. Final regular season SEC series at home of the season for the Gamecocks. That's right. We blinked. College baseball's regular season winding down in just a few weeks. We'll be talking about conference baseball tournaments and doing the seedings for the NCAA regionals and super regionals. All that will be coming down in just a few short weeks before the end of the month. That will happen, and some work to do for USC if they want to become a top 8 national seed. They have a lot of work to do to get there. Clemson has won 5 straight. They begin a series at Notre Dame, their first ever ACC series in South Bend against the Irish. 7:30 start time there. That game, if you have the U on your cable or satellite package, you can watch the Tigers take on Notre Dame tonight in South Bend. We mentioned the Braves in action tonight as well, starting in about 10 minutes against the Chicago Cubs. Hour number 2, we'll have Matt Dickman, head coach over at Kennesaw High School. He is the coach of Lorenzo Nunez, the very stellar quarterback, USC's highest-rated quarterback commitment in the Steve Spurrier era since
Steven Garcia,
second highest-rated QB prospect. Monty Dutton, we're going to get the full Monty as NASCAR is in Kansas this week, so we'll find out what's on his mind. I'm sure he's been following the draft too. Monty, he has more than one lane, so to speak.
There you go.
He can cover a lot of things, so very busy in hour number 2.
You talked about the Nunez kid. The light came on for Spurrier that his offense some adjustments had to be made. Is when Savell Newton. I think Savell Newton opened his eyes about having a quarterback with legs that can keep the chains moving. And then then Connor Shaw comes in, and I think that's probably he and G.A. Mangus have seen the light that this is the future of the quarterback position.
And Mangus already saw it, which is one of the reasons why Spurrier brought him in. And Tim Tebow came along, and Spurrier said, you know what, that's what we need to do. And Spurrier, he's been around a while, but he's not a dinosaur. He has evolved in his days.
All right, gentlemen, stand by, stand by.
Live from Columbia, this is Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network. Be a part of tonight's show. Call us at 800-956-7266 or email talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, here are your hosts for Sports Talk, Phil Kornbluth, Kevin McCrary, and Tom Hayes.
Final hour of Sports Talk for this week, and it's going to be jam-packed with lots of great stuff. The second round of the NFL Draft is cranking up. Houston on the clock. We'll see what they parlay with Jadeveon Clowney here, where they go, what direction they go. They almost stumbled into Teddy Bridgewater last night, but the Vikings swapped out with Seattle to scoop up Bridgewater, who went with the final pick of the first round. You know, quarterback slid, Bridgewater slid, of course, Johnny Manziel slid. No running backs selected in the first round. Again, that used to be a position that everybody put a premium on. It just shows you how the game has evolved, how the NFL game has evolved over the past several seasons, where there's not as much of an emphasis. Unless your name's Adrian Peterson, you're probably in a running back by committee situation.
And I'm wondering two things. Is it because the passing game has become so vogue, or it's because the shelf life of a running back is short? I'm trying, because everybody's saying the game has evolved, but I don't care what you say. When it gets to the fourth quarter and you got a narrow lead, you run the football to win. And those teams that cannot run the football, they usually turn the ball over. The clock stops on incomplete passes. You don't, and now the clock also becomes your enemy because you can't move the football. So the running game is still vogue. I think more than the passing game that people try to sell at running back. I think it's their shelf life that has them downgraded at this point.
So we're doing rounds 2 and 3 tonight, right?
That's correct.
2 and 3. Who do we see locally coming off the board from South Carolina, Clemson, or any of the other schools? The next guy off the board, is it Bruce Ellington?
Yeah, I
think it's Bruce
Ellington.
Bruce Ellington might be the only guy off the board for South Carolina. Everything that I have seen and read and heard through the grapevine is that Kelsey Quarles has probably slipped to a Saturday selection.
You know, the interesting thing is, it's funny. He talked about his gut and how he's kind of gotten rid of it. I've seen one scout actually say that he looks at the film, which is what you should go through. He looks at the film. He loves Kelsey Quarles. But when he saw his body in person, he said, wait a minute. Now, hold it now. Now, I don't care how a guy is shaped. If he can make tackles and hold the line of scrimmage and stuff to run, you draft him. But for some reason, everybody wants to see God, these great Greek god physiques or something. He doesn't have that, but he's got production.
Well, he lost some of that guy.
Exactly.
I mean, I thought he looked a little too svelte for my taste. For a defensive tackle, you want a little girth there for anything, just to eat up space. But you could put weight back on the guy, and maybe good weight. I thought Kelsey Quarles was a third-rounder when he came out. He played like a third-rounder. I think he's also running into some of everybody was paying attention to that J.D. Clowney guy on the outside, so you got to go up the middle and make some tackles. But Quarles can play.
Yes.
He's a ball player.
The best moment of my life right now, it's a great accomplishment. I'm proud to be a Bill, a guy that's being physical on the line and dominating defenses.
Now you can start addressing positions where you can say, okay, because of this, these guys have a chance to be successful. I'm talking about the quarterback position. And again, now you're pushing it back just a bit. The hope that one of those quarterbacks, whether it's Garoppolo, McCarron, Savage, Carr, who falls, because I think these teams are gambling. Right. Come third round time, maybe even come early day 3. Some of these quarterbacks are going to drop a little further than a lot of people expect.
Keep this in mind about Su'a-Filo. You'll appreciate this. He's the first UCLA offensive lineman selected in the first 2 rounds since Jonathan Ogden in 1996. We should say that worked out pretty well for Trent Dilfer and the Baltimore Ravens. We'll see if it works out similarly for Su'a-Filo, who won the Morris Trophy, which is given to the most outstanding offensive lineman in the Pac-12. Team captain, by the way, says he patterns himself after Logan.
Sammy Watkins on the loose in Buffalo. We still don't know what number he is going to wear. Clowney, by the way, for those interested in such things, will wear number 90 in Houston next year.
Interesting.
Not sure. I mean, normally you find out right away, but Buffalo has not released his number. He can't wear number 2. NFL rules stipulate that you have to have a double-digit number. He could wear 12 if nobody has 12 on the roster, so he could be 1-2 or 1-1. We'll see what Sammy Watkins does.
I hate to take a cheap shot, but tell Clowney his number isn't the speed limit in Texas.
Right.
I remember Texas used to didn't have speed limits, but they do now.
They finally slowed people down. All right, let's hear from Sammy Watkins as he was introduced to the media and personnel in Buffalo today. You know, he grew up a Buffalo Bills fan.
The best moment of my life right now, it's a great accomplishment. I'm proud to be a Bill. I can't wait to get it started, and I want to thank all the fans and the organization for trusting and believing me. And I'm been having a great morning. Woke up this morning, did interviews, and I'm having a great time.
You said last night Doug Whaley told you on your visit here that he was going to come up and get you. You didn't think it was true. What did you say to him today?
My first impression was like, man, he was serious, and he's an upfront guy. And he trusts and believed me, and jumped up and came and got me. And I just want to thank him and the organization and the team for believing in me.
Chevy, you've not been afraid in the past to talk about how good of a player you are and what kind of talent you have. How ready are you for this, and how good do you think you can be in this level?
I just got to work. I got to come here and be focused, ready to start with the team. Got to be prepared. Just got to get here and be ready to work and learn. And that's the biggest transition. I got to be willing to sacrifice, get the right rest, eat right, and stay in that playbook, dissect the playbook, and get started with EJ.
They basically said, you know, you're going to be the guy right now to lead them in the playoffs. They expect that. They expect to draft low because of it, and they expect you to help develop EJ Manuel, franchise quarterback. You feel the weight of all that responsibility on your shoulders.
Throughout my whole life, I've been having high expectations for myself and my coaches, my parents, my peers also. So for me, it's to keep doing what I've been doing, and that's working hard, being a great citizen, and just translate that to this team, to the Buffalo Bills, and I'm 100% committed to the game and to myself. So I think for the most part, I come in, get behind some great guys, great receivers, and the coaches, and listen, and I'll be perfectly fine.
Sammy, if you realize you were like 6 years old, I think, the last time this team made the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, that's okay. It's a lot of factors that weighs out that, but now is a worry about the future. I'm a Buffalo Bill, and I just can't wait to get started and get the things on the right path.
You put up a lot of huge numbers after the catch, with the ball in your hands. Can you kind of talk a little bit about how that's something that running ability always came naturally? Is there anything you've done to develop that ability?
God just blessed me with that unique talent. Over the years, I trained to get fast. I trained know how to run, and it's just a privilege that going to Clemson. They got me the ball a lot of different ways with smoke screens, with getting a lot of guys in front of me blocking, and it's definitely been a privilege playing with those guys.
How about can you talk a little bit about your mentality when after the catch, just the sort of the aggressiveness with which you kind of attack once you get the ball in your hands?
My mentality is to score every play. That's my mentality, to score, catch every ball that touched my hand, and that to create a problem for the defense, to make the defensive coordinator think hard, to make them double guard me. That's my job, to dominate cornerbacks, safeties, defense, linebackers, and that's where I take pride in, scoring all over the field. I can play X, Y, Z, kick return, punt return. I'm willing to sacrifice anything to win.
Sammy, you grew up a Bills fan. How did you become a Bills fan, and also did getting drafted by the Bills make this whole experience even more surreal?
Growing up young, you want to be playing with the best team on the game, and you love the colors. And just growing up playing, my dad, my brothers, cousins, I always used the Bill, and I mean just using Drew Bledsoe, Ed Reed, Eric Mose, all those guys, and to kill Spikes on defense. So I mean, it's a great accomplishment just to be on this type of stage, and having all the organization believing in me. Now I'm can't wait to get started, get ready for mini camps, OTAs, and get started with offense, and just getting accustomed to everybody here.
Sammy, how much did you pay attention when you were at Clemson and EJ was at Florida State? Just what kind of quarterback EJ Manuel was in college? Did you pay attention at all?
Well, I played against him, and 99% of the plays he made, came back from a 14 deficit in the fourth quarter, and beat us for the division. And I mean, he's a great guy, and so far he's been doing great in the NFL, and he's going to be a great future pro here.
Did you have any contact with him away from the football field when you guys were in college?
Not at all, but since I've been drafted, I have a lot of guys that reached out. EJ, CJ Spiller, Marquise Goodwin. We had a great conversation last night, and it's just great that those guys understand the process, and they welcome me in, and I just wish the best for us and this team. And I want to thank all the fans that supported me. I'm pretty sure it was a wild time here last night.
Sammy, Coach Sweeney said you're a low-maintenance superstar. Can you just explain how you've maintained your humility despite the fact that for years people have probably been telling you how great you are as a footballer?
The best thing I can do is stay humble. That's when it works. I don't like talking about my game and my accomplishments. That's what the media is for. All I love doing is playing football, dominating defense. And being a great citizen, that's what it's about. That's when you get more out of it. Being a leader, being a figure of all the kids looking up to you. And that's what God put me on this earth to do, and that's to lead.
What did you learn from 2 years ago along those lines? One, the story I read, it seemed you felt you become complacent as a player. You slipped off, and then you had an incident off the field. What did you learn then that you can apply right now?
Everything happened for a reason. I did have an incident 2 years ago that kind of weighed a factor now. That's why I'm here today in front of everybody, and that's why the Bills picked me. I learned from all my mistakes, and I'm a guy that if it happened one time, it won't happen again. And I'm definitely have been blessed with the support staff I have, my coaches, my parents, and that's why I'm here today.
How about just as a player? I got the impression from a story in SI you felt you kind of almost got a little lazy as a player after you're All-American as a freshman.
I think that's a natural reaction from a young guy. I was 18, didn't know that college was that serious. All I was doing was playing football, having fun, scoring touchdowns, and then I'm being put on a stage like that. You can't recognize all you're doing is living and having fun, being a young guy. And after you get caught, you realize how many people that looks up to you. And now I understand why I'm put on this earth, and that's to lead and to inspire a lot of other people, just not myself.
As you're meeting fans and being interviewed and learning about Buffalo and talking to management and coaches, can you begin appreciating the urgency that this team needs to win, the goal to win sooner than later, even this year?
I think that's why everybody's here. That's why the coaches, the whole team here, to win games, and that's why they chose me to win. and I just got to start off on the right foot. And it's a blessing being here with the organization. I've been in other areas, had great interviews. Everybody have welcomed me here. Now it's been a great last 2 days. Just been great for me. Now I'm committed to the Bills, and hopefully we have a great season.
I mean, we've heard a lot of comparisons to your game. Who do you pattern your game after? Who do you think you play like?
Being a kind of shorter receiver, I look at myself as a Torrey Smith, Victor Cruz, kind of a Julio Jones type guy, and trying to get to Larry Fitzgerald. I'm trying to be that finesse guy, that guy that can run any route, the guy that can make just about any play, a complete player, the guy that block downfield, a guy that's being physical on the line and dominating defenses.
Sammy Watkins, the newest Buffalo Bill. He'll see 4 familiar faces there, as 5 former Clemson Tigers are now a part of that Buffalo Bills squad. C.J. Spiller, Jonathan Meeks, Antoine McClain, and Hairston is the other one for the Buffalo Bills.
Okay,
Chris
Cleveland's coming up with the pick.
We'll see who Cleveland picks. We'll update you on the draft and give you more here on Sports Talk. Recruiting also around the corner.
With the 35th pick in the 2014 NFL Draft, the Cleveland Browns select Joel Bitonio, tackle, Nevada.
Well, even with the issues around Josh Gordon, they're going with beef up front, and this guy's got the beef, and he's got a mean streak, Mel.
He really does. If I were the Houston Texans, I'd have taken him over Sua Field. If I were the Redskins, I probably would have taken him and not traded out. Kid was a nasty, mean, very solid offensive lineman. Think about 6'4" and change, 302 pounds, tremendously athletic, runs under 5 flat in that 4.97 range. You talk about a guy, left tackle, right tackle, kick him inside the guard. There have been talks the Cleveland Browns may have had an interest in Jake Matthews early in this draft. Now they get Bitonio. Now you look at wide receiver still as an area they have to address. With Joel Bitonio not, where is he going to fit best in an NFL offensive line?
I think he can play tackle. He's got 34-inch arms, which is what you're looking for, or more. And I think his nastiness, again, he's a tone setter. I think you could play inside a guard, but you could play him at tackle. When I first appreciated Joel Bitonio was against Anthony Barr, who was the 9th overall pick in this draft. He worked Barr over. He got Barr so frustrated that Barr actually showed a pulse and some toughness the first time I saw on tape. This guy is going to bring a tone-setting mentality to Cleveland. Well, here's where he gets that toughness from his father. His father, when Bitonio was 4, Mike, he took him to a mixed martial arts fight. His father was 6'1", 215 pounds against a 6'3", 260-pound guy. He went in without his knuckles wrapped and absolutely got battered for 8 minutes.
USC and Mizzou underway at Carolina Stadium. No score in the top of the second inning. Clemson, Notre Dame crank up at the bottom of the hour. Let's jump into some recruiting here. We have Monty Dutton coming up, the full Monty report on NASCAR, all sorts of things to get into. Also a conversation with Matt Dickman. Lorenzo Nunez, the Gamecock quarterback commitments coach, coming up here in our next segment. Defensive end Marquavius Lewis out of Hutchinson Junior College in Kansas is back at his Greenwood home for a few weeks, and he'll take some time out to visit USC while he's in the Palmetto State. He's scheduled that visit for May 17th. USC has been out to see Lewis during the spring out in Kansas, and recruiters Deke Adams and Kirk Botkins continue to work him hard via social media, and a couple of times a week they're hitting him up on the phone. He says they lost Clowney, and they're trying to find some guys that can play for them right away. They see me fitting into that position and playing. Now, Auburn and Alabama are also working him hard, and like USC, they're not among his favorites because he doesn't have a favorites list right now. USC will be the only visit he'll make while he's home for a couple of weeks. Clemson has offered, but Lewis said he hasn't heard from the Tigers since then. All right. Defensive lineman Tim Settle out of Manassas, Virginia, released his list of, a top 15. At least it's not a top 20, but a top 15.
Wow.
Anything over 10, guys. You youngsters out there formulating your list, don't release anything over a top 10. There's a reason why it's called a top 10. That's what you should release, no more than a top 10, and even that's much. But anyway, here is Tim Settle's top 15 schools on his list in no particular – no, he did so in order of preference. How about that? Well, at least he did them in order. Clemson is sitting in the catbird seat. Sitting in the 3-hole behind Tennessee and Alabama. The rest of the 15 are Florida State, Texas, Virginia, Virginia Tech, Penn State, West Virginia, UCLA, North Carolina, NC State, LSU, Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma. He visited Clemson earlier this year for a junior day, plans to visit again soon. Clemson and South Carolina have offered linebacker Amonte Caban, 6'2", 210 pounds, out of Smith Station, Alabama. He plans to visit each school this summer. Caban does not have any favorites, but is getting strong interest from the two Palmetto State schools. He's never been to Clemson, but he hears it's a real nice place. Some would even say a special place. His coach wants him to go up there at some point in early June for a visit. He went to junior day at South Carolina. He said he liked it a lot. Brent Venables, Tigers defensive coordinator, has been in touch, as has USC's Kurt Bakken. Other offers include Mississippi State, Kentucky, Louisville, Southern Miss, Cincinnati. Some interest coming in from his in-state schools, Alabama and Auburn, along with Vanderbilt, Wake Forest, Florida, and Purdue. There it is, tonight's recruiting report. We'll have more recruiting discussion coming up with Matt Dickman, Lorenzo Nunez's high school coach, coming up in our next segment. Don't forget, you can go to sportstalksc.com and read the very report that I read you in actually greater detail at sportstalksc.com. Lots of recruiting going up at sportstalksc.com. We have enhanced and increased our recruiting coverage at sportstalksc.com. It should be a place you visit a lot if you're a recruiting nut. And even if you're not, there's other stuff for you there at sportstalksc.com.
Big pick by the Raiders. Derek Carr, quarterback, goes to the black hole.
You have something new, something borrowed, and something blue.
Right.
Just need to find you something old.
What are you doing?
All right, stand by. Come back.
We've got our eye on the second round of the NFL draft here in our Sports Talk studios. No local players have heard their names called yet. It could be a quiet night, especially relatively speaking, compared to last night when we saw 2 Palmetto State players go in the first 5 picks. But we'll see if a guy like Bruce Ellington hears his name called in the second or third round. Maybe a guy like Taj Boyd, although he's probably a Saturday guy. Most everybody else we expect to most likely hear their name on Saturday. Hey, let me tell you, if you're looking for more out of your education, Palmetto College offers the quality of a 4-year education online. To find out more, visit palmettocollege.sc.edu. With Palmetto College, your future has no limits. We head out to the guest line and welcome in Harrison High head football coach Matt Dickman joining us on the line now. He's the coach of Lorenzo Nunez, who announced his commitment via Twitter. You got to love 2014 announcements via Twitter. He announced his commitment to South Carolina. Coach, we appreciate you joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We all know that Lorenzo's a highly touted guy. In fact, he's the second highest ranked quarterback prospect that Steve Spurrier's landed at his time at South Carolina. Stephen Garcia is the first. Tell us a little bit about what kind of player the head ball coach is getting.
Well, he's a phenomenal athlete. He can do so many things, and to be honest with you, he could play on the defensive side of the ball and the offensive side of the ball. He's just got really good speed, great flexibility in the hips. So, he can play corner, he can play wide receiver, but a phenomenal athlete that can do a lot of things, throwing the ball and running the ball. He's got a 4.5 speed, and I'm just glad that I get to coach him this year yet.
You talked about the different positions he can play. Is that something that they've left the door open to? Hey, being as highly touted as he is, I'd imagine he's going to be a quarterback. But is he open to if he's got to wait a while, or if he doesn't feel like he's playing in time to switching to another spot?
Well, I don't want to speak for him. I just know that the one thing about Lorenzo is he just wants to play. He's a very humble young man, and he just wants to get on the field. And if that would be in another position, I'm sure that he'd be ready to do that. But, his dream's always been to play college football, and he's worked hard at it. And I think he, with the offenses that everybody's running today with the zone read and the power read, he really fits into that type of scheme, and plus the way he can throw the ball down the field.
That's what I was going to ask you next. The offense that you guys run there in Kennesaw, Georgia, very similar to what Steve Spurrier is running at South Carolina.
Well, we run kind of like a hybrid wing with that, with the power read in there and the zone read. And, you really got to do what your quarterback can do, and he can do so many things. That's why, we added when I got here, the zone read and the power read, and we're just doing, a lot of different things to get his hands on the ball, whether it's, rolling out run throw option, and we're tagging plays. But, a lot of it is just surrounded around what he can do. And again, being such a phenomenal athlete, you just got to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and as far as him running the offense as well, if you get into a tight situation, you need a first down, or maybe you even need the touch when you get in the red zone. What is his bread and butter play? Is there a favorite play he likes to run?
Well, there's a couple of them. One of them's the sweep to the outside, where we actually bring a back in motion across the formation, and if we're going to run the football with him. But we also have plays where we bring the guy in motion across and set up a pass slat or to the back of the end zone. But one of the plays is off tackle belly, off tackle power. Those are both plays that he runs really well. And so anything off tackle or outside, with his speed, we really like to get him out on the flank, and we have a lot of run throw option plays.
obviously his evolution as a quarterback when he gets to the next level, and even at the high school level these days with all the spread offenses, how is he in reading his progressions at this point in time, would you say?
Well, I think he does a great job because I was his third head coach in 3 years.
Wow.
And I had to tell a lot of people that. I said he's been through 3 offenses. So when we got here, he really started to grasp it quickly, and we threw a lot at him. But we had practice today, this morning, and we were doing, everything with the power read, the zone read, and tagging plays, and it looked great today. We're light years ahead of where we were last year because he's been in the same system now going into his second year. So I think for him, I haven't talked to him directly about it, kind of got here and we just moved forward, but it's probably a big relief for him to have the same head coach for 2 springs in a row instead of having a new one, but he's really grown into what we want to do and accomplish over the last year. And like I said, this week of spring ball, he's just head and shoulders above where he was last year.
Talking with Matt Dickman, head football coach at Harrison High School in Kennesaw, Georgia, also the head coach of Lorenzo Nunez, who committed to South Carolina yesterday. When you talk about a guy that has played so many different positions and he's a runner, we try to put quarterbacks, fair or unfair, in a bottle. And usually when we say, well, this guy's a pocket passer, we say he doesn't have a lot of mobility, or this guy's a runner, he struggles with his passing. Is there an area of his game that you think he needs to improve on? Is he a polished passer at this point? We know he can run. Is he a pretty polished passer?
I think that he does everything well, and that's probably why he's been such an attractive, quarterback, because he can do it all. The one thing that he is a very competitive young man, and probably the one thing that I would say is maybe once in a while we need to throw the under route instead of hitting the deep ball. But that's just a little bit to do with his competitiveness. In practice, a lot of times the check down read he didn't hit and he went for the deep one, and he might get it in there, and I'll say, that was great, but we really want to take advantage of what they're giving us over here. So I'd say the one thing, and again, last year he was just a junior in his first year with me, is maybe to just, go down to your check downs a little bit more instead of always taking the deep ball. But I also know that Coach Spurrier likes to throw the deep ball.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking, that he's a man after Steve Spurrier's heart, because usually he'll tell the quarterback the opposite.
Maybe.
Yeah, why did you take the safe guy? He had a step on that deep pattern out down the field. But was that a big factor for him? Obviously, Steve Spurrier, with his reputations and quarterbacks now, he's known to be very hard on his quarterbacks with those expectations. But was that one of the big deciding factors for him choosing South Carolina?
I really don't know that was. I think the number one thing is they've done their homework as a family. He's gone to a lot of camps. Number one, he wanted to go someplace where he's going to be comfortable with the staff, and obviously he is there. Number two, he wanted to go someplace where, that they'd have a chance to win year in and year out, and obviously they've done that at South Carolina under Coach Spurrier. So those were 2 of the factors, and it's so close to home, and it's the SEC. So I think, a little of all that, and plus, he wanted to go someplace where they had an established program, and, Coach has done that there. And so those were all some of the factors, and he's going to get to play for a great coach, too, that, has a great track record.
Who, for those of us that haven't seen him play, is there a guy out there that you can compare him to, the way he plays?
Well, probably a combination of a lot of guys. He's got the athletic ability of all those quarterbacks that you see every, Saturday. You could throw any of those in there. He's got a little bit of, I think, Brett Favre mentality where he likes to gamble. But, and he's got a little bit with the moves and the way he can accelerate that, I'd say that a Johnny Manziel has had, or, he's just got a lot of different things that he can do well, and he's very gifted at moving out of the pocket, and he's got a strong arm. So there's just a lot of things that he does well that other quarterbacks do that you could compare him in a lot of different ways. But, I like to a little bit compare him to that way in the Brett Favre and any of your athletic quarterbacks that can run the football.
Well, They can tell, they can see why he's such a highly regarded young man. Sounds like you have a great player there. Coach, we appreciate you taking time out. Have a great weekend. Good luck this season. All right, that is Matt Dickman over at Harrison High School in Kennesaw, Georgia. His star quarterback will be a Gamecock next year.
Pick in the 2014 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Marquise Lee, wide receiver, USC.
A very popular selection here. Marquise Lee overshadowing the camo tux of Brad Meester. Marquise Lee, potential first-round talent, fell to the second round. You have to think Jacksonville got a steal here.
You got to believe it. 5'11 and a half, 192 pounds. 2 years ago with Matt Barkley at quarterback, Marquise Lee led the nation. 118 receptions, 14 touchdowns, also averaged 28 yards per kick return. Super athletic, great body control, runs great routes, can sink his hips. Uncharacteristic drop this past season. Didn't have Barkley, had some injury problems, fell back, didn't run a 40 at the expected 4.53. If you go back 2 years ago, he was as good as any wide receiver in the country.
The worst drop percentage of any wide receiver in this draft class. Now we've seen the two receivers with the worst drop percentages drafted. You put Kelvin Benjamin there, number 2, just behind this guy, Marquise Lee. But And when they started getting him the ball midway through the season, and when they figured out their coaching situation, he kind of came back and started to play a little bit more like with the Marquise Lee that we saw in 2011 and 2012. He's a great route runner, he's quick, and I think he's going to be an immediate impact player in the National Football League.
Look, you're only as good as the quarterback's throwing you the football. That was a big problem for Marquise Lee last year. The other thing is, if you know this kid's story, it is unbelievable the hardship that he has gone through to get to this point. Both his mother and father are deaf. He was taken away from his mother because family members feared that they would not be able to care for him and his 3 other siblings. He learned sign language. He's a kid that has really gone through a lot. He holds 24 USC records, 3 Pac-12 records, and of course the Jaguars need offense. 15.4 points per game last season, fewest in the National Football League. They expect Marquise Lee to change that because they won't have Justin Blackman for the entire season. They're not expecting to anyway. Marquise Lee could provide immediate dividends for the Jags. Stay with us. The draft continues.
Love it when it's fast. Love it when the leaders talk. The pack is moving fast. Love it when they're making lots and lots of noise. Can't wait to hear the W say. Boogity, boogity, boogity. Let's go racing, boys. Let's go racing, boys. Love it when they're drafting. Love it when they slide. Love it when the back straight.
Time for the full Monty. Monty Dutton joining us here to talk a little NASCAR. Kornblut Monty not here tonight. You know, it's the Confederate Memorial Day, so Kornblut he always takes this day off to honor the Confederates.
I see.
That's the way that works. But we're happy to have you on board with us. You've been following the draft?
I have somewhat, yes. I wrote an amateurish blog about it yesterday.
What was your take on the first round?
Oh, I wrote about the fact that, well, I just really talked about local people in Mansell because, first of all, I thought that Sammy Watkins was like the most reliable person. That he's going to be a really good receiver. And then I said that I talked about Clowney, and I thought that I actually have a friend of mine in the coaching business who I found out later last night that he made the exact same comparison that I did, which is Julius Peppers. And then the other comment that I made was the fact that I don't doubt that Mansell can be a great NFL quarterback. What I doubt is that he can last very long.
And
I worry about him playing a team like Cleveland where he's going to get himself killed.
Yeah, and looks like he lost his number one receiver.
I guess
today.
he just have to talk to Fran Tarkenton about how to get down.
Well, that's the model. I mean, Fran Tarkenton is Johnny Manziel by far. That's the closest he is to any player I've ever seen.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think he's a heck of a talent, but boy, those guys in the NFL, they get one clean shot on you when you go outside of that pocket, and it's game over. Not just that game, but multiple games. So, all right, let's shift gears back into the topic at hand here. First of all, your thoughts on Talladega over the weekend. Anticlimactic on the finish, but a great race up to that point.
Oh, I think as a general rule, the races have been really good all year, and I think that that was just sort of typical Talladega. I do think that the racing there, at least the style of it, whether you like it or not, whether you like this tag team a few years ago, right now, the look of the racing is very much like it was in about 2000, because the pack stay together. Now, the trouble from that I think people are going to have to adjust to, and every time Talladega, there's always unexpected things, is that the pack is so thick that the guys who just try to stay clear and hang back and then go flying through the field, they can't get through it. It's like going through the thickets after our boys landed at Normandy in World War II. And so I think that's what the drivers are going to have to adjust to next time they go to Talladega.
And now they go to Kansas City. I've tried to become a fan of this track, but it's hard for me to wrap my brain around it for whatever reason. It just seems to fall into that cookie cutter cliche.
Well, that's very definitely true. I think that when racing expanded so much, they built a lot of tracks, and it's kind of like what I've heard people say about stadiums, like the multi-purpose stadiums that went up in the 70s. All the Three Rivers and Riverfronts and Atlanta and all that. They're multi-purpose facilities that don't do any purpose as well. These racetracks, when they first built, they kind of had in mind that they'd run Indy cars and all kind of race cars there. And so they really paid a great deal of attention to everything about the track, but the actual surface of it. And so I do think that the racing has been better at those tracks this year, but it's kind of still the whole thing where they race around all day, and then it gets really exciting in the last 15 minutes.
Dale Jr., he had a shot last week, made a mistake, might have cost him an opportunity to win that thing, but he has been competing on a level that we haven't seen him compete consistently in a long, long time. What, with your trained eye, have you noticed that he or his team is doing differently this year to keep him closer to the front and in contention?
I think that obviously there's a lot of factors in raising performance and everything else, and comfort with a crew chief and everything. But I think that Dale Earnhardt Jr., that confidence makes a big difference with him. I mean, I think that he has sort of a frail sensibility, and I think the losses piled up on him, and he had to sort of build himself back up. And I really think that is how he's gotten back to the driver he was up to about the middle part of the last decade.
Very good, Monty. We appreciate it. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the rest of the draft. It's going to be a great sports weekend. Lots of stuff to check out with the draft and the race on Sunday. And we'll catch up with you next week.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. And Monty Dunton joining us, the full Monty here on Sports Talk. We will get you up to date. Still no locals selected in the second round of the NFL draft. Not expecting any in this early part specifically. Maybe on the back end or maybe into the third round. In all likelihood, they're doing rounds 2 and 3. Back with one more segment to wrap this thing up on Sports Talk.
Stand by, please. We'll wrap up this week. Right, Schmiel.
We'll update the baseball in South Bend, Indiana. Clemson and Notre Dame, their first ever ACC series. No score in the second inning. USC and Missouri, their second ever SEC series. Second time they played in Columbia, although this one is in Columbia, South Carolina, not Columbia, Missouri. That joke just never gets old. The Battle of the Columbias. Gamecocks on top 1-0. They're playing in the top of the fourth inning, and looks like the Gamecocks. We moved to the bottom of the fourth inning, and it is 1-0 Gamecocks. And Max Schrock, boy, he's batting in the 2-hole and playing DH tonight, 2 for 2 with an RBI. That is very big that the Gamecocks got him back, considering it looked like for a spell they weren't going to have him at all. Hey, if you want more out of your education, check out Palmetto College. They offer a quality 4-year education online. To find out more, visit palmettocollege.sc.edu. With Palmetto College, your future has no limits. So the Gamecocks with an early lead. They have to win a lot of games here down the stretch to get back into the picture for a top 8 national seed.
Yeah, I think probably you're looking at them being able to win some games, K-Mac, and also to get healthy. I think they've worked hand in hand, because even though people say it doesn't affect the committee looks at, well, wait a minute, is this team getting back intact for the most part? And I think that's going to be a key to their success. And then they'll have to do something they haven't been able to do even in their College World Series years, and that is to be able to do some damage in the SEC tournament, something they have not been able to do.
Now back over to the NFL draft. Here's a pick I really like, maybe my favorite pick of the second round. No, definitely my favorite pick of the second round. The Eagles selecting Vanderbilt wide receiver Jordan Matthews. I love Jordan Matthews. Caught all those balls at at Vandy and just a very good player, just a football player. And I think he's going to be a very good NFL wide receiver. We'll see how it plays out. I know people like to knock the Vanderbilt guys. They did it to Jay Cutler, who isn't a terrible NFL quarterback. He gets kind of a bad rap. They did it with Earl Bennett, who had a solid career. He was a very good receiver at Alabama, at Vanderbilt. But this guy's better than Earl Bennett. Yeah, I think he's a better receiver.
I think he's got more speed, and I think he runs better routes, especially the deep ball.
So we'll see how it shakes out. We'll keep you up to date all weekend long with the baseball scores and audio from USC, Mizzou over the weekend. Also reports from Clemson, Notre Dame, and South Bend. Check all that out at sportstalksc.com. We'll also have updates via Twitter and the website on the NFL Draft.
And, of course, we're expecting maybe Bruce Ellington to go later on in the second round. Maybe we'll get one third-round pick coming from South Carolina coming up. Also, maybe Dozier, the lineman out of Furman, has to go at some point. Maybe he's tomorrow, Dakota Dozier.
That's going to do it for us. Have yourself a great weekend. We'll be back on Monday, same time, same place here on Sports Talk.